And now it's time for Talking Trade with Sandi Siegel and Ken Wasylik, sponsored by the Wisconsin Center for Manufacturing and Productivity, Michael Best Strategies, and Carroll University.
Well, let's go with more on the reshoring and how the tariffs are passed along. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, so as far as I'm going to echo what Tim says, is that the first 301 tariffs that came through were a shock, because it was a big shock. And then over time, people are saying, okay, can I negotiate lower prices with our Chinese vendors? Some worked. Some of our clients, it worked. Many, it did not work. Another thing that the Chinese government did is they did, I believe, a 8 or 10% devaluation of the yuan. Okay, so that was advantage for domestic Chinese producers. Receiving dollars, they got more yuan to cover a higher so-called price in local currency. Some of our domestic, we had one domestic exporter here in Wisconsin who 100% almost, they are a steel and stainless steel fabricator. Well, when the tariffs came in 2019, the price of steel went up 25% immediately. So they tried to source additional steel from U.S. mills. Well, guess what? The price went up 25%. And so, yes, they tried to source it domestically, but quite frankly, it was the same price because business people are looking for increased revenue, right? So the domestic suppliers. And the second thing that happened with the domestic suppliers is they were put on allocation, which means that the domestic suppliers had so many customers, it exceeded their capacity. So they allocated X amount, like 80% to one client, 60%. So they could not get all the steel that they needed, all the stainless steel they needed. So all of a sudden they're doing substitutions, instead of 301 steel, they're doing 401. And at the end of the day, they had 3 price increases in 1 year, just to maintain a level of somewhat of a profitability. Now, we represented them on the export side, finding markets in Latin America and Middle East. And quite frankly, all those markets dried up. Why? Because their prices went up 40% in 1 year, where the, let's say, Mexican supplier could get that either locally or from China or Korea. So we lost market share during that time frame. Second thing is they didn't have enough supply, right? So I'll also echo is that this country doesn't really have the labor force to increase capacity quickly. At 4% unemployment, and now there's only 2 ways you could do that. Is that to automate or immigration? Well, immigration is off the table, so companies have to automate. And we're lucky because we have a European customer that is really looking at what they make is they program and design robotics manufacturing cells. They're really looking at the U.S. market. They just incorporated. Part of our job is to find them space so that they can go after customers, come up with a customer list. We're going after Caterpillar, Kubota, all these guys. They're really interested in developing it. So from that standpoint, the reshoring is going to work because it's going to be automated, right?
But it's going to take a while.
It's going to take a couple of years. In every single project that they do, it's going to be 18 to 24 months.
Okay, so Alexandra, let me ask you, or does anybody here disagree that tariffs at the end of the day are going to increase prices? Because Ken just cited what happened the last time. Is there any reason to believe that they won't increase prices?
No, I think it's proven that they can increase prices. But again, I think it normalizes over time. And that's the big one little anecdote, and I just read that this morning, that I did not even know about it. I don't know if you guys had seen that or not. The population in the state of Wisconsin over the last 2 years has increased 24% over the last 2 years, each year. And it was all immigrants, international immigrants. And, it's obviously, border related, that sort of thing. What's also interesting about it, they're not here. They're basically in the northwestern part of the state, which is, agricultural and manufacturing related. So that influx of labor may change what we're saying about as far as the labor situation in the state as well, to some extent.
Okay, Alexandra, what about, let's try to track the effects on, Wisconsin industries, Wisconsin farmers, Midwest industries. If there is an all-out trade war, how does Wisconsin and the Midwest fare and all that?
I want to go a little tangent to get back to the answer.
Okay.
One of the things.
Well, you're an instructor. You can do whatever you want.
Okay, so now you're going to play. Let's go into the world of theory. This is a dangerous question. Is a trade imbalance even bad? I'm not going to try and answer it. Is it really bad? Why do nations trade? Why do nations trade?
Because when they have an advantage in something, they can sell it. If they're less advantage in something that a company wants or a nation wants.
So we don't trade bananas because we don't have a comparative advantage. It's going to be really hard to build a whole bunch of hothouses that grow bananas and that we could trade, right? So scale is what I'm getting at. Wisconsin makes more dairy products than all of Canada. And Canada only has 8% the population of the United States. So the question is, why drive a perfect balance of trade volume and dollars between nations? So some things might be surprising. Maybe you've heard some of the provinces, the premiers from the provinces speak quite differently. They're like the governors of states. So while, for example, a partner like Canada with only 41 million people as opposed to over 300 million here is in straits, is because they say it, we catch a cold here, they get the flu. So little things, bumps in this economy can drastically affect the Canadian. So, for example, they have a highly protected dairy industry, which was a big point of contention with the USMCA and was renegotiated. Flat out, Canada wants to protect its dairy industry for food security. So they have a very rigid supply chain management system where they have quotas of production, which result in the prices that they set as a goal. That's actually a marketing group that does that. And their whole philosophy about how the economy should run is based on a perspective of the government and what it can and should do. So, for example, you can hear it in the national documents of each country. Someone finished a sentence for me. In the United States, you want to pursue life, liberty, and? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Here's the difference. In Canada, it's peace, order, and good government. You hear the difference? So more Canadians are likely to see the government as an agent of their well-being. You see it in the free health care, which is, that's just not true. It's through the tax system, believe me. The taxes are very high up there. But, so that brings us back to the question about Wisconsin. Wisconsin has an unusual ability to supply the dairy needs of Canada at the expense of knocking the dairy industry out of business or making a severe cut into it, if their market dynamics and supply chains work the way they do here, and they don't. So a lot of it is about preservation, and then you hear the differences. For example, Smith in Alberta, the premier, is like, let's trade. Look at the USMCA. 97% of all trade is tariff-free. So I believe that what President Trump is trying to do is not talk about, he's trying to talk about fair trade, unsubsidized goods should be flowing, not subsidized good where the government supports the industry, props it up, and then you have this odd pricing policy. So I think that Wisconsin's in great shape, like you heard. It's got an immigration that assists the labor force issue into a greater productivity. And we really can't tell what's going to happen. We have to watch what happens up north. We have to watch what happens in Mexico. Diplomatic relations are tightening with the old country. For example, Canada is making overtures to England and the rest of Europe and now Asia. So I think Wisconsin's a strong player. We have, you see Canada at the top, it's back in import place number 1, and then Mexico and China. I think you're in the epicenter of a lot of events because manufacturing's here. And I think it's exciting in a way we didn't anticipate. I agree with Tim. I think the initial bump is going to be painful, and like water, folks are going to be seeking new markets where they can get the best price. Some things won't work. Some things are easy. For example, businesses are already moving closer to the border if they're not coming in. And actually, billions of dollars are coming into the United States to produce here. So now we need the labor.
You've been listening to Talking Trade with Sandi Siegel and Ken Wasylik, sponsored by the Wisconsin Center for Manufacturing and Productivity, Michael Best Strategies, and Carroll University.